There's no such thing as a must-win Week 7 game, but this is as close as it gets for the Cowboys and Commanders. We'll dive into that next.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to a crossover edition of the Locked On Cowboys and Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys. Joining me today is David Harrison from Locked On Commanders. And on today's show, we're going to talk about the biggest matchups to watch here in Week 7. We'll talk about some keys to victory. But David, let's start with some storylines, and there's never a shortage here between the Cowboys and Commanders. What's going on right now in Washington?
They can't control the ball. They can't hold on to the football. Going into Week 6, Monday Night Football against the Chicago Bears, one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, going up against the top rushing attack in the NFL. The game plan was pretty clear for most of us, right? Run the ball, establish the ground game, and control the football. Like it's just one of those games where if you just don't turn over the ball, you're going to win. The Washington Commanders failed to do that. They turned the ball over 3 times. They failed to, they didn't have a terrible rushing evening, right? But they failed to certainly dominate on the ground, I think is easy to say. And they end up losing by 1 point to a very opportunistic Bears team. And I think that, Cowboys fans are familiar. You're familiar. If you look at the Chicago Bears, a lot of times right now they're winning when the opposing team does them a lot of favors. And granted, the Bears did some things to try to give away the game on Monday night as well. But the Commanders certainly did no favors for themselves in preventing the Chicago Bears from having every opportunity to steal one away. And it's a team you're looking at. It should be 4-2, but they're 3-3. And like you just said, it's not a must win because there are no must wins in October. But if there ever was a must win, this is it. Especially when you look at the road ahead for the Washington Commanders after Dallas.
And for the Cowboys, we're coming off this Panthers loss in Week 6, which was just a really bad one where the defense did you no favors in the second half. The Panthers possessed the ball in the final 7 minutes, never gave it back to the Cowboys. Mm-hmm. And you're going into Monday night feeling really down. You're 2-3-1, but with the Eagles slipping up against the Giants and then the Commanders losing to the Bears, a very winnable game, all of a sudden you're just one loss behind the Eagles in the division. And Now you've got a game against Washington. You take care of business at home. And while you're not probably going to be leading the division, you feel pretty decent about your chances at 3-3-1. So I think for the Cowboys and the Commanders, this is a game that you have to win. If you want to have any hope of making the playoffs, and in the NFC, David, it's just loaded with team after team that's competitive. You want to try to win this division. That's probably your best path to the playoffs. This is a monster game for both sides.
Yeah, the Philadelphia Eagles already learned the hard way. New York Giants are a team on the rise. You know what I mean? And I don't know how good they're going to get. At some point in time, they're not going to catch anybody by surprise. At some point in time, every D coordinator is going to have tape on them and be able to do all those things. And that's going to absolutely matter. But you kind of look at it and, the Giants are kind of like little brother that nobody's really worried about right now. Maybe next year we'll see what you can do and all those things. But it's catching up. You know what I mean? It's catching up in the division. We talked about this in divisional preview. Like the Eagles are kind of taking a step back down to earth, and everybody else is trying to take that step forward. The Washington Commanders are kind of in the middle, a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde type of situation. And on top of it, you got all these injury concerns. I know the Dallas Cowboys have their own set of injuries to worry about, but the Washington Commanders, after missing Noah Brown for 4 weeks already, put him on IR on Wednesday. So they're going to miss him for another 4 weeks. So that's 8 weeks of no Noah Brown. Obviously for this weekend, he's going to be out, which is the most important thing to this audience. Terry McLaurin, we'll see, limited participant in practice on Wednesday. So that's good news. But at the same time, it's, we've seen him limited in practice already. And then he went ahead and missed the game. And then Sam Cosmi doesn't have to return for this game. The Washington Commanders actually have until next Tuesday to make him active, or else he goes back on season-ending IR. And that's not going to happen. But it does mean that he doesn't have to play against the Cowboys. He just has to play against the Kansas City Chiefs. So, who's going to be healthy for this game? But ultimately, Marcus, I think everybody's going to agree, the most disciplined team and potentially the most disciplined offense. I think that both of these teams have proven that they can win shootouts. Both of these teams have proven they're actually kind of comfortable in shootouts, right? So I think the most disciplined offense is probably going to be the one that wins this game.
And for Dallas, this is kind of a tipping point game because if you were to win, again, you'd be 3-3-1, and being 500 after 7 games isn't ideal, but you keep yourself in the race. And maybe the hope is now you can go out and make a trade or 2 on defense to shore up that back end. And they're never going to be average on defense. They're just not. But maybe you can be not awful, and that's enough to get you in the postseason. And winning a game against the Commanders at home would feel like you're taking a step in the right direction. Yeah. But if you lose this game and you drop down to 2-4-1 with your only wins coming against Russell Wilson and the Giants in overtime and Justin Fields and the Jets, now I wonder if the Cowboys were to look at it and think, okay, maybe we're sellers at the trade deadline. We already traded Micah Parsons before week 1. We know we're not going to be competitive. We've got a stretch coming up where it's like, I think it's Eagles, Chiefs, Lions, Chargers in 4 straight games. This is about as close of a must-win game the Cowboys have to kind of save their season. And I know that sounds dramatic, David, but it really feels like this is the game. If you were to lose, I have a hard time seeing them being able to overcome that and bounce back.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's not over dramatic because I'll tell you, I know like it's a weird world that we sit in media, right? Our job is to be, kind of that beacon of like reality and balance and all that stuff. At the same time, you're also plugged into the fan base, you're plugged into the team, and you're trying to gauge the temperature of both. And I've got Commanders fans on this side of things saying, if this team loses to the Cowboys this weekend, fire Joe Witt, which if I were to tell the Dallas Cowboys fans, like, hey, what if I could give you a top 12 scoring defense in the NFL and the top 5 pass rush in the NFL and a top 10 red zone and a top 11 third down defense? How would you feel? Cowboys fans would sign up, all over the place, but Commanders fans are talking about firing Joe Witt. It's just a lot of it is expectation management. A lot of it, is the way that things have happened, right? But I think Dan Quinn really hit the nail on the head on Wednesday when he said, we're not getting the football. They're not taking away the football. You know what I mean? There's just not enough turnovers being generated by this Commanders defense, and Cowboys fans are not going to forget by now. That is what the Dan Quinn / Joe Witt Jr. defense lives on. That's what you need. You need those takeaways. They're not getting them. That's why you have, I think, some of these defensive issues, and that's why you have some of this angst circulating the defense specifically, even though by most metrics, it's actually a really good defense compared to the rest of the NFL right now. But that's just where it is. You're in the NFC East, incredibly proud division. Every team has a proud history. Every team wants that history to become reality again, and nobody wants to take anything less than that. And I think that in one hand, it can lead to overly frustrated people when things aren't going right early in the season. On the other hand, though, I mean, to be honest with you, like that's the kind of group that you want to be competing with. That's the kind of group you want to be coaching with, because those are the same fans. When you deliver, I mean, we saw Northwest Stadium in Landover, Maryland, go from almost 0 attendance as far as Commanders fans are concerned to completely packed house in less than 1 full season. Because when you deliver, the fans are just as rabid on the other side. And Dan Quinn wants nothing more than 2-game road trip, Cowboys and then Chiefs on Monday night next week. Wants nothing more than bring 2 victories home, at least 1 Cowboys pelt back from that trip. To give to the Northwest Stadium fans because they deserve it.
The big game. Real quick, one more thing. It's our first Dak Prescott versus Jayden Daniels matchup. We were robbed of it last year because of our Prescott injury. We got Jayden Daniels versus Cooper Rush the first time around, which the Cowboys won in one of the wildest games. Then it was Trey Lance versus Daniels for a half, and then Mariota came in, another wild game. So just storylines galore between Dan Quinn's former team, Brian Schottenheimer and Dan Quinn, coaching against each other after their days in Seattle. A lot of fun things to follow here on Sunday. David, let's get to some matchups that we are excited to watch in this NFC East battle. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to say no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. I said yes to making the switch, and now I'm getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same number and all of your contacts. The setup is super easy. You keep your number, then you're off and running in minutes. Are you ready to say yes, to say no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That is mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Upfront payment of $45 required. Limited time, new customer offer for 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on the unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Nobody likes paying rent, but if you must, you might as well get something for it. That is where Built comes in. Built is changing the game by turning your rent payments into real rewards that you can actually use. When you pay rent through Built, you can earn flexible points that can be redeemed toward hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. But Built isn't just about rent. It's about rewarding yourself around your neighborhood. I love that I can just go out to eat to one of my favorite local restaurants and use my Built rewards, or I can go to the gym and I'm still earning those rewards. Built has made everyday life feel more rewarding, from your neighborhood to your travel plans. Turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That is joinbilt.com/LockedOnNFL, and make sure that you use the link so they know that we sent you. Welcome back to this crossover edition of the Locked On Cowboys and Locked On Commanders podcast. I am Marcus Mosher. He is David Harrison. David, let's talk about some matchups that we are excited to watch here in Week 7. What do you got?
I mean, again, I know it didn't go as great in Week 6 on Monday Night Football against the Chicago Bears as you'd like it to, but I think that it would be a very big mistake for Cliff Kingsbury to just turn away from the rushing attack. And look, there's a little bit of fear involved there because we all know Cliff Kingsbury, studied or worships at the Church of the Air Raid, loves to throw the ball deep, loves to have explosive plays. We all do. Who doesn't love an explosive play? But what we've learned about this team in 2025 very early on is it is best when it establishes the run first and then hits the play action, opens things up outside of that, especially without Terry McLaurin on the field. You don't really have a true blue field stretcher. I think Jayden Lane, the rookie out of Virginia Tech, has potential. He's a smaller 5'10" type of guy, so he's got to be able to get behind the defense. Debo, I think, has.
Do you think McLaurin plays this week?
Honestly, I'm iffy. I'm 50-50. I'm 50-50. And I have reason to believe that I'll put it to you this way. If he doesn't play, it's not because he's not putting everything into it that he possibly can. Like I can just say that definitively. And I know that people say that a lot of times and it's like, okay, he's getting a lot of treatment. No, like this dude is working his butt off to try to make sure that he's on that field. He wants to be out there. He knows how important this game is for his team. I just don't know. It's a quad injury. It's so hard to think that he might be able to be back. But I'm hopeful. But I'm straight at 50-50. I know it's such a boring answer. I mean,
I wonder even if he's out there, if he's going to be at less than 100%, because those quad injuries, they just zap all of your explosiveness. And if you're somebody like McLaurin, who's not a big receiver, you need every last ounce of your speed out there to beat these corners.
Yeah, he needs to be able to high point the passes like that quad. I mean, it's such a big part of this process. I mean, from the release to the break, I mean, they use him for a lot of hitch routes, like just sitting down at the top of your route, at the top of your break to turn around and hitch. Like it's such a, anyway, we can get all the medicals of it, but it's a tough injury. It's a really, it's probably second to like hamstrings, right? It's just such a tough injury. So I honestly don't have like a firm feeling on it, but either way, even if Terry's out there, like you got to establish the run. The thing I didn't necessarily love against the Chicago Bears is how much they put on Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. 17 carries is the biggest workload he's carried in a game this year, and it went up against a defense that was surprisingly stout against the run, compared to their previous season, previous performances during the season. And I just felt like you needed a little bit more Jeremy McNichols. You would have loved to see some Chris Rodriguez Jr. in there. Now, Chris Rodriguez dealing with a calf injury. He didn't participate in practice on Wednesday this week with the same calf injury. So that certainly probably played a part. But they've got Chase Edmonds on the practice squad for a few weeks now. So maybe this week, if Chris Rodriguez isn't fully healthy, maybe you see him inactive, Chase Edmonds come up. use 3 running backs, just kind of pepper them in there, because what we've seen from Ja'Cory is, as exciting as he is, 2 straight games now with the fumble lost. Like against the Chargers, it didn't do anything. Against the Chicago Bears, it was a massive turnover in that game, led to the Chicago Bears' first touchdown of the game. And, in a game that ends on a game-ending field goal, every single scoring opportunity now becomes that tipping point between a win and a loss. It's just a lot to put on a 7th-round rookie in the first half of the season. So I would just, 1, need to see Cliff stick to it. 2, get a little bit more variety in there. Use Debo a little bit more. He's dealing with an injury. But, just as much as you possibly can. I mean, Ben Sinnott, when they drafted him, they compared Ben Sinnott to Kyle Juszczyk. Mm-hmm. Let's give the Commanders Kyle Juszczyk some carries. You know what I mean? Let's give him some short yardage work, something like that. But yeah, I think that's kind of the starting point for whether or not the Commanders are going to be successful on Sunday.
And for the Cowboys, it's the matchup for me is Dak Prescott against Bobby Wagner. And I know Wagner has struggled a little bit the last couple of weeks. And I know you've had some long conversations on Twitter about benching him, but these are 2 of the most cerebral players in the league. And what I think Dak Prescott's superpower, like if you look at like Josh Allen, it's his size and arm strength. And Mahomes, it's creativity. And Lamar Jackson, it's rushing ability. For Dak, it's his ability to diagnose things pre-snap and post-snap. And when you're going up against somebody like Bobby Wagner, who has seen it all over his years in the NFL, I'm going to be fascinated to see what these 2 do to try to make sure that their units are in phase, they're ready to go. The other thing I wanted to say is, just from an outsider perspective, and again, tell me if I'm wrong, Washington has looked incredibly slow on defense this year. And maybe that's because they're one of the oldest defenses in the league. I'm going to be curious to see if Brian Schottenheimer tries to take advantage of that lack of speed. Do we see more Kevontae Turpin if he's ready to go? Do we see more Jayden Blue, the Cowboys speedster from Texas? Mm-hmm. I got to think they're going to try to expose this linebacker group in their secondary with a lot of speed.
Yeah, Jayden Blue is a name. I'm glad you mentioned him because he's a guy I've got my eye on. Like he's a speed guy. He's agile as all get out. And those things are dangerous, right? And it's there. I think there's 2 hands to this whole Bobby Wagner conversation. Like, Commanders fans are seeing Bobby Wagner get exploited more than they've ever seen. Obviously he wasn't exploited like this last year, but he's been exploited by offenses this year more than I think anybody expected. I think the person who might be the most surprised about how much Bobby Wagner is being exploited by offenses is Joe Jr., because it doesn't seem like he really had a plan in his scheme to fix this. Because here's the thing, and I don't think Commanders fans believe this, but I'm going to put it this way. The opponents of the Washington Commanders in 2025 are not the first teams to come up with the idea of, hey, let's get our running backs and receivers and fast tight ends against linebackers. That's been a strategy for decades, right? Like every offense in the last 20 years has tried to get there. I mean, guys were trying to get Ricky Waters matched up against Ken Norton Jr. when he was in the league, if and when they face off against each other. This is nothing new in football. What's different is defenses, you come up with a plan, right? You understand that that's something that they're going to try to do. So how do you counter that? You come up with that counter. Teams didn't really try to do that last year all that much. They didn't really try to get those matchups on that linebacker, on any of the linebackers, Frankie Louvu included, last year. And I don't know that Joe Witt Jr. necessarily saw that coming this year. And then now that it's here, it's really hard in season to start installing new concepts. It's very difficult because you're still trying to build on the initial concepts you have. I think that's where the struggle is coming in. But I think week to week, you have to understand it's coming. So how do we continue to work through it? Because Bobby Wagner's never been an athletic freak. And this hasn't been a problem on every defense that Bobby Wagner has been a part of. So I think, it's certainly something you're going to expect to see. Kevontae Turpin terrifies the crap out of me in this game. Jayden Blue, I think he's dealing with if he plays.
Yes.
Yeah. Jayden Blue, I think he's a very sneaky, like if you're desperate for a running back out there in fantasy, I'm telling you right now, Jayden Blue might be able to get you, a few points here and there. And then George Pickens, excuse me. George Pickens had a really good game last year as a Pittsburgh Steeler against this Commanders defense. Different players. Scheme has changed just a little bit, but this defense has proven to be susceptible to explosive passes. So, I mean, the Cowboys have the horse. Like I said, shootout. I wouldn't be surprised, Marcus, if this thing, hopefully it's not 40-40, right? But like 37-34, 40-37. Like if you told me that was the final score, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised.
No, and I think Dallas knows that they're going to need to score 30 plus points in this game to win. and they're going to treat every possession like it has to be a touchdown drive. So anytime they get past the 50 and it's reasonable, I think you're going to go for it. I think you're going to see the play calling shift a little bit. They might be more open to running on second and long if it sets up third and manageable, because they're going to go for it on fourth down. So expect Brian Schottenheimer and the Cowboys offense to be highly aggressive targeting this Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. defense, because they know that side of the ball has to carry them. All right, Dave, let's talk about some keys to victory, what both the Cowboys and Commanders need to do on Sunday to secure a win. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, and with more IIH Top Safety Pick awards than anyone else, they're really the only choice. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all the details, and Mazda brings the same intention to how they craft every single model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make your everyday drives feel like anything but, with smooth handling and fantastic controls. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. I know where I live, you have to have all-wheel drive because of the snow, and that is where Mazda delivers. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Welcome back to this crossover edition of the Locked On Cowboys and Locked On Commanders podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast. 2 shows every single day, one in the morning with Tyler Rowland, one in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, David, let's talk some keys to victory. What do the Commanders need to do to get this win and improve to 4-3?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've kind of touched on a few of these things, so I'll be a little bit quicker, but obviously you have to eliminate the turnovers. You can't give away, possessions, and credit to Chicago Bears on the one fumble, the first fumble of the game that they recovered against the Commanders. They certainly created that. Montez Sweat with a great punch out to get that ball loose, but the interception was a late throw. Great read by Jayden Daniels, late throw. I think as that game went on, you saw him trust his own reads a little bit better, a little bit faster. And that's when you saw that kind of old Jayden Daniels come out 3 touchdowns later type of thing. And then the second fumble right there at the end of the game was just, Jayden said it himself, lack of focus on his part and just terrible timing on it. Get the ground game running like we just talked about in depth, and then pass rush. This Dallas Cowboys, offense, for one reason or another, you can tell me whether it's the O-line, whether it's just Dak, whether it's a scheme, whatever it is, they're just not giving up sacks. And this Washington Commanders, it's all the above. And this Washington Commanders pass rush, top 5 in sack rate right now. So one of those things has got to give. One of those things is not going to be continuous in this game. If you're the Commanders, you got to make it their side. You can't make it your side. Dorrance Armstrong Jr. has 5.5 sacks through 6 games. He is on a tear. He's on pace to have almost 17 sacks this season. Certainly on pace to eclipse his career total. He's dealing with a hamstring, so he's also right now questionable for this weekend. But if he's out there, go out there. It's not really revenge, right? But go out there and get that performance back in your old home stadium. Von Miller, come out there, do what you were brought in to do, shoot those threes, as he put it, and get that pressure on Dak Prescott up the middle. Get that pressure. Javon Kinlaw can be a beast when he's really on. And see if we can't get Frankie Louvu opened up. I mean, offense have been putting big dudes on Frankie Louvu to take him out of the picture, and it's working. So 2 things. Joe Witt Jr., got to continue to adjust to teams trying to isolate Bobby Wagner. And you got to continue to try to find ways to get Frankie Louvu loose, because you got to get pressure on Dak Prescott. Deep passes mean long developing routes. Get that pressure on Dak and see if you can't take advantage of what is a middle ground interception rate that he's got right now. Because if you don't, Ray Allen is. Can we stick with the NBA analogies? You just let Dak stand on the spot. You might as well just be playing against Ray Allen, right?
Real quick.
I'm not going to go Steph Curry yet.
It's fine. Ray Allen's a good one. Can it really be a revenge game when a team drafts you in the 4th round, and then they give you another contract?
That's what I'm saying. I don't think it's a revenge. I don't think Dorrance has any hard feelings.
No, Dorrance is a good dude. For the Cowboys, the offense, the standard is so high. They have to be almost perfect on offense. You can't turn the ball over. You can't have multiple drives in a row where you punt the ball. You can't kick field goals in the red zone. And that was the issue last week. They punted the ball twice That was one time too many. Like, you cannot do that in this game because you know what your defense is. So go out there with the intention and the idea of, like, we've got to score 34 points. And on the defensive side, just make things weird, right? Try to get your hands up in the air in the passing lanes and tip some balls into the air. Send some weird blitzes that don't make sense, that might confuse Jayden Daniels. You're going to get gashed one way in this game or another. You might as well try to be aggressive creating takeaways, because I think if Dallas can get 1 or 2 turnovers in this game or get a quick 3 and out, that's how you flip a game and you win it like this. And I think for Dallas, they are the worst team in the league when the offense can either run or pass the ball. They can actually be okay when they know that you're in an obvious run situation or an obvious passing situation, but they cannot let them just be in 2nd and 3, 3rd and 1, because that's how they're going to get beat.
Yeah, look, over under on this one at FanDuel right now is 54.5 points. I think you got to smash that over, man. This game's getting to at least 60, right? This game's getting to at least 60, I think. So it should be, I mean, a lot of highlights going to come out of it. You know what I mean? One side or the other is going to come out happier than the other. But I think you're getting a lot of highlights. And not a revenge game, but you know what? Always love going to Jerry's World, man. If Jerry Jones does one thing right, is take care of visiting media. So
there you go. I remember you were talking well about the food. I think it was last 2 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making this crossover edition of the Locked On Cowboys and Locked On Commanders podcast your first listen of the day. Follow David on Twitter at DHarrison82. I am at Marcus_Mosher. Join us back here on Friday to preview this awesome NFC East matchup, and we will see you guys then.